All right. How do we do this? Just start with hey.
Hello, Nyambura.
Hey.
So nice to see you. It's
So good
been
to see you.
of the world. I mean, we're across the other side of the world from each other.
Yeah.
There's the globe has changed.
Ooh,
In between us having these conversations and you coming to London in was it,
August.
was it last year? God, it
Yes.
was last year. It feels like
Yeah.
10 years ago now
I
because of
know.
what
I
everything
know.
that's happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
Coming to London to the NoDirectFlight launch and
Mhm.
having you there, it just feels, but it's so great. It's so great to be here, and it's so great to be on the eve of NoDirectFlight, Nairobi,
Yes.
takeoff, and this was always the dream, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And I mean, when I came to London, it was actually quite funny. We never thought I was going to make it. So it was always
Yes,
like,
that's right.
are you gonna come? Are you gonna go? And
That's it.
Sandra British Council was like, no, let's just get the applications in and just let's go. And and we finally did. I did make it. I made it, I think a day after. I think it was there. I arrived on a Friday and I was there on a Saturday or something. And
Mm.
then meeting all of you, and then the journey of just like trying to figure out how do we then curate in a different space, because we're looking at London, Philadelphia, Nairobi, and each were responses with the
Yes.
films, what type of conversations
Yes.
they would create, and how will our imagination broaden? What are the responses? And I think that was a richness and what attracted to me. I mean, finally, when I was selected to curate, and then understanding it being a film season and understanding the directions that it was trying to go into that people hadn't gone. How
Yeah.
do you create something that links Africa and African diaspora filmmaking without trying to paint them with the same brush, and actually deal with
Yes.
the contestations and all of that, and that the conversations we had in London
Yeah.
at a point in time, and then in Nairobi on WhatsApp and Skype. Remember?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Are
For
you there? I
months.
can't hear you. Are you there?
Yeah. And doing with the timeline. I mean, I
Yeah.
thought because the original, like any most ideas, there was a long gestation with it because it was all about the internet,
Yeah.
really. So it's
Yeah.
really great, and we can come back to like where it's landed in the end. Um, but it was all about kind of a question around what the internet has done for us as
Yeah.
artists and as it done for us as a people, as global connection. And for someone who was traveling throughout the diaspora, always on planes, like what you trying to get to London and it not quite happening, all these missed connections. It
Yes.
felt like the internet was the place where the connection was direct,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
in terms of thinking about, and this is why I was so excited to be working with you, to have you on board, to take this to Nairobi, because Kenya seemed the obvious place in
Mm-hmm.
terms of where the conversation is happening already on the continent, given how that Kenya has so much been a test bed for so much of the internet, for the online
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I haven't been to Kenya, still haven't been. We didn't get
We
to
were
go
waiting
because
for you.
COVID happened. Um,
Yeah.
but so
Unfortunately.
I knew nothing. I knew nothing really beyond that fact, really, and some amazing artists, obviously, coming out of there, um, who are having a global impact. So having the conversations I had with you was so enriching and expansive and expanding my own context. And I remember actually the conversation we had at the global meetup
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
where so I can't remember what exactly had happened, but I remember you coming out of the session and giving a completely different perspective of
Oh
it.
my God.
Yeah,
That's
brilliantly, like brilliant in your classically brilliant, acute way. But essentially,
thank
you
you.
were given the perspective from the other side of the world. You were like, no, this is not how it looks like from where I'm sitting. And so
Yes.
those were the conversations that I thought were for me completely I thank you for them really because they were part of my own expansion, my own um, growing knowledge around what the internet has done and this conversation around the diaspora, around Africa and us in the diaspora,
Hmm.
and the differences as well as the similarities.
Yeah. And to be honest, I learned a lot too. I'm a almost diasporan all the time, but never long enough. Always coming to what could be called home, and never knowing. I'm also one of those people with a fluidity to home. But then I started to understand what it means to be a diasporan, and with the conversations that we had, and start to maybe have more empathy when it came to statements or imaginations or questions or even storytelling.
There is that too, right? Yeah.
And I started to, I think I started to develop an empathy for what it means also to be apart from what you have considered home, or you're forced to consistently think that that's your only home, like go back home, like a lot of immigrants are told, but building a community, a country, a citizenry, and looking at Africa and saying, this is also home. So it was quite interesting to now sit and I think for me, being in London was like my exchange. When you were an exchange student, when you're younger and you're told you can go off to another country, and it was now having I'd say some intelligence now. You're older, a little bit wiser, experience a little bit more. You're testing what you thought you knew, and just sitting and hearing, and then just the vibrance of the creative space and the African diaspora space. And then now starting to make the links, because at times I think as Africans, there's a difference between Africanness and Blackness and how it operates wherever it goes, and I think that became our conversation. And then understanding better Blackness, to be honest, just understanding it better, because as I said, I've always almost been, I've just not lived long enough to say now I have a Black identity where I am, because you end up having one. It's quite, it is a reality, and so understanding Africanness and Blackness and how we inspire each other, but not because we're similar. It's also in those separate moments that create such great touch points of just amazing creativity, that we start to talk about things in such different ways, that two cultural texts are so similar, dealing with such similar issues, but just so different in their approaches. And it really, I think for me, NoDirectFlight does that for me. It is a place that is nebulous. It's a place that's unfixed. And for me, that is where the imagination happens. And that's where the love happens. That's where the empathy happens. And that's when I feel art transforms you. It becomes transformative. And for me also, it happens in a film season more than a film festival. I mean, I love film festivals, don't get me wrong, but that curatorial journey that we took, and these are the films that can speak to each other. And me also telling, actually this one can try it here. And you're like, wow, I didn't think about that. But me now understanding why you had that there, what other themes it could address and what other conversations it could, instigate. So I thank you for being the brain woman of NoDirectFlight and bringing us together in the way that you have. And as you said, I just love for you to just expound on how your imagination around the digital space, and now here we are.
And no, exactly, completely online, which is exactly where it should have, that it has to sit here. It has to sit. I know it's obviously circumstance, but I'm kind of curious actually to know. Obviously, we had early conversations, probably about a year ago now, actually, about how there was obviously clear conversations in London, very specific to London. I think of a film like Entitled by Adeyemi Michael, where he films his mum, his proud Nigerian woman, riding on horseback through the streets of Peckham, which is a very kind of urban London environment. And it was all about, a lot of it is about disconnection. A lot of it is about us trying to, there's a nostalgia, a sense of loss, about trying to reclaim. And it was very much about aesthetics, because it felt to me, I love how you talk about the imagination. It felt to me that aesthetics is the place where the imagination began to play out, which is why there was these aesthetic echoes that were taking place all the way, I think, across the diaspora. But they weren't necessarily resonant, I guess, in terms of with the Kenyan perspective, because the need, I guess, is there. So I'm interested in how you took the NoDirectFlight idea, and what were the things that you thought were important to make it land in Kenya right, you know?
Oh, wow. Here I thought we're just going to do this and I was going to walk away.
No,
Yeah,
that's not how dialogue works.
this is no, and this is not how we work. It's not how
Yeah,
we work. Oh, this
exactly.
is lovely. Thank you. I've sat with this programming for so long. At times I have like authenticity, aesthetics. I also think for me, the aesthetics also came through not just a visual, but the storytelling choices that independent Kenyan filmmakers are making. So there's some also older films that this filmmakers made, shelved them. There's some on Vimeo, but for me, they were bold. They were bold to shoot where they did. They were bold to choose the stories that they did. And, some are satires, some are dramas. A lot of it is fiction. There's one in particular that actually is about how internet culture influences your life and your perspective on life. So that was really great. I think for me, it was both in the visuals and the leaps that the storytellers were making, particularly in Kenya, because of our filmmaking environment and the cultural space and how people get funded and all of that. So when I see a filmmaker just being bold, audacious, I'm like, you know what, come along for the ride,
Right.
Because that's fiercely independent filmmaking. And that's why actually one thing that did change really from everything was that I chose to have a Surreal 16 collective as the featured filmmakers of NoDirectFlight. Because they like encapsulate the ethos of NoDirectFlight.
Yes.
Fearlessly
Yes.
independent filmmakers, absolutely always playing with aesthetics and story, and just doing their own thing and having global impact. Now Abba Makama's Lost Okoroshi is on Netflix. Michael Omonoa's The Man Who Cuts Tattoos is it premiered at the BFI London Film Festival. CJ Obasi, his short films have been doing so well with Hallow Rain. And then Ojuju was curated as part of like a Halloween package. I forget what magazine, but they're making their moves and strides in the globe based on their ideas of filmmaking and what African filmmaking was, and particularly what Nigerian filmmaking to them, like how they expanded the notion of Nollywood. So they're like feature filmmakers, and we're going to close up the festival with a conversation with them, just like taking the journey for people to see that, you can do this. And it's not just about being in European or American film festivals, that as an African and African diaspora filmmaker, there's so many ways that you can blaze a path for yourself, and just keeping with those ambitious moments. And just, you will not be accepted everywhere, but the moment you continue to sit in that confidence, a lot comes in so many different ways we don't expect it. So that's something that changed, that was different. And yeah, I'm really excited about that.
I am too. And I think Surreal 16 is a great a great addition, a great focus, because I think when you even describe all the things that they've done, I think the other thing that NoDirectFlight is charting is how, in a way, African and African diaspora filmmakers arguably perhaps are at the forefront of the way that films are being made now.
Yes.
In the old day, you would get your short and then you would make your feature and a distributor would pick it up and it would be on the big screen and then it would be out on DVD. And it's like, no, now magazines, brands, obviously Netflix Africa has started since NoDirectFlight,
Yes.
So suddenly you can bypass all of that. And I think, it's been wonderful to see African filmmakers completely blazing a trail in that way,
For sure,
for sure.
And it's one of those things where like, oh wow, we can do this our way. Yes. So many times we've been beholden to the typical routes that you have to take, and the acceptances that have to be brokered along the way. And now you can launch on different VOD platforms, aside even from Netflix that are on the continent. You can also, one more thing is, before we wrap up, is the fact that now filmmakers are also playing with different versions and texts of their film. So they did, like they make a short film, and then now they make a book that is inspired by the film. So and that's something that was very important to me, is how do all these artistic expressions come together and speak to each other? So even every day of the film festival is named after a book. Yes, it's named after, by different African books. The last, our day 10 is Frantz Fanon's, his seminal work. And so it's just came together, and the different partners who came on board. We have Downriver Road that are publishing stories by different writers that respond to the films, and then they place them situate them in a Kenyan Nairobi context.
I love it.
Yeah, so it's really exciting. It continues living,
Yes.
It continues taking flight. It continues.
Yes. Yeah. And I love the from digital to print. It's genius.
Yeah. So thank you so much for this great idea.
Thank you. This is like, I feel like we need to reach out to the screen. I don't know which way. Yeah, that way. There you go.
Oh.
International connections. No, it's been, honestly, I'm so glad that I've learned so much from you. I love to see you work. You're exciting, I think, as a talent, as a curatorial talent, and your vision about. So I'm so happy that the baton, was handed over, and that, yeah, you were able. I cannot wait, and I'm so happy in a way, the fact that I couldn't get to Nairobi, but I can participate. I can watch everything.
You can watch everything, and you can watch it all on Vimeo. You can watch it at the Facebook watch parties. You can participate in conversations. You can watch the conversations after on the YouTube channel, the Koi YouTube channel. So we've got you covered. We've got you covered.
I'm liking that. I'm liking that.
Thank you.
Break a leg. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Nyambura. Take care.
Bye. As I try to figure out how to stop the recording.
Okay.